Welcome back to a great episode of Principal Matters podcast. We are so excited to have a very interesting guest today, not a typical sort of guest we have on the podcast. I am joined today by a gentleman named Mike Fitzpatrick. Hi, Mike.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm so excited for you to offer some perspective to our listeners who are largely principals, but some district leaders as well. And to our listeners, let me tell you who Mike is. Mike is the founder and CEO of NCX Group, a leader in cybersecurity solutions. Mike has over 25 years of experience in information technology risk management, regulatory compliance, and privacy legislation. He's built quite a reputation as a trusted expert in the field, and our listeners should know I found Mike just kind of looking at some of the presentations that he was doing about cybersecurity for schools. I found him on LinkedIn and reached out and said, will you talk to the principals here? So a little bit more about Mike. Throughout his career, he's collaborated with Fortune 50 and Fortune 2000 companies, developing innovative strategies to protect sensitive data and maintain business continuity. His expertise in cybersecurity has led him to serve as an advisor to influential policymakers, including Senator Dianne Feinstein and Congresswoman Bono, contributing to critical NORPDA and DATA legislation. Mike is also a distinguished fellow at the Ponemon Institute, where he continues to shape the conversation on privacy and data protection. Mike is known nationally as an engaging speaker and regularly shares his insight at prominent forums, helping organizations understand and mitigate cyber risks. You're pretty passionate about this, Mike, about advancing cybersecurity. You have a dedicated team at NCX Group. You provide services like risk assessments, compliance reviews, penetration testing to businesses of all sizes. And you and I spoke last week to kind of just frame this conversation, and I can confirm that this is an area of passion for you, and it is also an area of great concern to schools, whether they admit it or not. Cybersecurity is a problem in schools, and part of it, as we talked last week, is, we're educators, we're principals. We like to think we log in and we're safe. And so I hope that you have, if nothing else, some education to offer to our principals today.
Well, I hope to. And it's one of these things. Cybersecurity is not really an IT issue. I say this all the time. It's not just IT. It's the whole organization. Cybersecurity is a business process. Simply put, it is a business process. It is the one business process that actually cuts through every business process. So it touches literally every part of the organization and is probably the most complex piece of life that we deal with today because there's too many points of entry.
Well, and I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I do think a cybersecurity attack can bring an entire district down. That's actually why I reached out to you. A district that is close to mine was attacked, and it was a ransomware issue. And it was, days and days to kind of untangle what had happened and get back online. So why don't you tell the principals listening, how do most cyber attacks happen and why do they happen?
It is a variety of ways that it happens. I think the simplest is old credentials, things that have been forgotten, that have not been removed from systems.
Wow.
Maybe a consultant that was brought in for a period of time and issued an email address. It could be that somebody didn't actually use a really strong password, which is pretty typical. 123456, I think, is still the number one password being used today, according to a recent survey. The reality is you have to make it a hard target for the attackers. They're in it for the money. It is
Okay.
about causing disruption. It is about gaining a payment. And the reality is, with the ransomware attack, which you mentioned with the district down the street, the ransomware attacks last on average, according to the research, 22 to 24 days of downtime. So for the average small business, or I'll use small businesses as an example, districts are much larger, but comparable in some ways.
Mhm.
The average downtime, like I said, is 22 to 24 days. The average cost per hour is $10,000 per hour
Oh,
disruption.
wow.
So, with that in mind, it's $240,000 a day, and it's a 5.6 to $5.7 million hit over those 22 to 24 days. The reality, though, is it's not done once you're back in operational. It's probably going to impact you for probably what I'm seeing typically 6 months.
Wow. So who or what is behind this? I mean, I'm very naive about this, Mike. I admitted that to you last week. Who's doing this?
The easy answer is cyber criminals. I mean,
Okay.
cybercrime is, and it can come from a lot of variety of places these days. The usual suspects are out of Ukraine, it's out of Russia, it's out of Belarus, it's out of Pakistan, it's a number of different China. China's definitely at the top of the list. It is cybercrime this year is projected to be worth $10.5 trillion.
Wow.
So 1/3 of the US debt is cybercrime equivalent.
Mm. Listeners should know that last week when we talked, I kind of begged you, can I please start recording? Because everything you were saying was so profound and just really important for school leaders to know. And we talked about how schools have been described as data rich environments.
They
Would
are.
you agree with that? And how at risk are schools compared to other industries?
The top three most at risk industries are um, federal government agencies of all kinds. Number two is healthcare, and number three is education.
Wow.
Why? Because the vast amount of data that is possessed within those entities. I know that with a lot of the community colleges we were talking last week,
Mhm.
we've worked with community college districts for the better part of 18 years. So a lot of those districts actually have clinics on board for the students to seek healthcare advice. So with that, they have to maintain the healthcare records of those students for upwards of 8 to 10 years, depending upon which state we're talking about. As a result, I'm thinking of one particular district in mind here in California. That district has 65,000 students enrolled each year.
Mhm.
You're talking millions and millions and millions of records that are accessible.
So, how can principals or districts identify malicious activity? Are there warning signs that a principal or a teacher might notice?
You know, it's really interesting what might or might not be a warning sign. What used to be the traditional warning signs like bad grammar in an email or something that looks like it's a Netflix account or your bank, or by the way, they don't know it's your bank. They're just guessing. They're throwing out whichever bank it might be, and
I
they're
see.
guessing. Or if it's something related to maybe gift cards or things that are an easy, everyday kind of hit. And these tactics have moved from email into text messages now, and they're actually now moving into voicemail. So if you don't know the phone number that's calling you, don't answer it. Let it go to voicemail,
Mhm.
because the scam is active, and it's lucrative for the bad guys. But to the point, as far as what we're seeing now, what we saw last year was a massive increase in the amount of phishing attacks. A lot of this is driven by generative AI that everybody is using now. So we saw it go what it has been for probably maybe the last 6 or 7 years. 60% phishing has been that high, and attributed breaches attributed to phishing. Last year went to 72, 73%. And that's
Wow.
because the attacks have gotten better. They've gotten more targeted. The fact that I can take someone's LinkedIn profile, drop it into generative AI, and run something that might actually be triggered based upon your interest or the causes that you support, and I can fish you that way. Man, it gets really easy.
Wow. So I think what concerns me personally as a school leader most is I might have vulnerabilities in my own accounts that would lead to a problem for my whole district. How might a district or a school identify their own vulnerabilities?
The best and only real place to start in my mind is you have to do an assessment. You have to find out where the vulnerabilities are. We've seen it through the years where a lot of IT people think, and the operative word is think, they know where they are.
Mhm.
Until you actually go through the examination and find out what you're doing well and ultimately what you're not doing well. The other piece is, what are you missing from your program? Because
Mhm.
in 23 years of just focused on cyber risk, the one thing I know is I'm sitting here and I'm alive and well in Southern California, and it's Valentine's Day. And that is a cybersecurity program, a robust cybersecurity program is the only thing that's going to save you.
Okay.
And even then, the research, and I keep going back to the research because state laws, every state requires notification now. With notification, we have to do a postmortem on the breach to determine what happened, what was exposed, what was taken, the impact, so they can write the letters to everybody that everybody has gotten at some point in time with a breach. So starting with that assessment, knowing where the bodies are buried, pardon me, knowing where the vulnerabilities might be within the organization, find out what's missing, is really the only way. The one area we find consistently, and there's really four areas that we find consistently in these assessments that are woefully um, um, addressed, I guess is probably the key word. One is patching. Nobody really does patching on the systems to make sure they're as up to date as they possibly can be. Number two is credential management, which we talked about before, usernames and passwords.
Mhm.
Everybody should be issued a password manager.
Okay.
Don't leave it to your own mind. I know personally I've got upwards of 250 passwords. There's no way that I can do that, or anybody can do that without reusing passwords. Guess what? If they catch one, they'll go try it on everything that they have for you. So they'll go get it. The number three is no business continuity plans and no incident response plans.
Mm, yeah, I can see that. And I also I think the credentialing part might speak most to principals. So obviously principals and teachers are already overwhelmed with training,
Sure.
ongoing job requirements, curriculum, mandates from the federal, state, district level, student behavior assessments. And I know as a teacher and principal, I just wanted my tech to work. I didn't even think about cybersecurity. So my next question is going to be, what are some things that are critical for principals to train their teachers to know? And I suspect passwords and student logins are a really critical part of this.
Well, it's absolutely critical from a cybersecurity awareness training perspective, which is front line. As I mentioned before, the only way to really be effective is with a program. And the research, and I started to say it, and I veered off a little bit. Um, the only way to really be effective is that cybersecurity program. With a program, from the time of breach to the time of detection is approximately a year before you'll know that you've
Mm.
been breached.
Wow. Okay.
If you have no program, the time from actual breach to detection is upwards to 2.5 to 3 years. So they can live within the files, do what they want, be as aggressive
Mhm.
as they want, download as much as they want. Um, for 2 or 3 years. So it's critical to have that program.
Right.
Key part of that program is cybersecurity awareness training. A huge fan of this. This is absolutely the front line of your defenses, is educating your team and your people to basically know what they're looking at and what might be suspicious and what isn't suspicious. And it is so effective just doing cybersecurity awareness training, a password manager, multi-factor authentication on everything, not just on some things, but everything. I know it's a pain, but if you
Mhm.
want to harden the environment and make it difficult for the bad guys to get you, this is
Right.
what you got to do.
So you said something to me last week that really struck me. And we talked about how schools are woefully underfunded in many areas,
Yeah,
limited resources to manage technology. And you said states are very different in how they're approaching this. And we know as educators, as principals, every state manages funding for schools differently, which means there is almost no consistency state to state and district to district. And
correct.
you're right. You told me, you said, Jen, this creates vast inequities for students in terms of technology access and security. So are there any states doing this well? Are there any is it about commitment? Is it about knowledge? Talk to me about states or special concerns related to this.
Well, California is one that is doing it fairly well, and I'm gonna say fairly.
Uh-huh.
Could it be better? Yes. State of California just 2 years ago granted $100 million to community college districts specifically for cybersecurity. Now, I've got a friend that's a state senator here. I've known for 20 years, and Kelly's a great guy. He's big in demand right now in Sacramento because he's the only fireman actually elected to the California Assembly. So, with the fires recently, his opinion is carrying a lot of weight right now. So,
Mhm.
in that deployment of funds, the legislature made two mistakes. One, they didn't give them enough on a reoccurring basis. So they gave them 75 million on a one-time shot and then 25 million on a reoccurring basis. The money got held up at the state chancellor's office, and it's now 2, 3 years later, and it's just now making its way to the district. So is it effective? No, it's not. Do they have to go justify it for their lives? Yes, they do. So
Right.
rather than handing out a chunk of change to each of the districts and let them go do what's needed, the state chancellor's office held on to it to try to control the districts.
Right. And then I am going to assume there's states that are doing nothing, right?
Well, I think every state is trying to do something. I remember, gosh, this was before I started NCX. I was running I was VP of sales for a company that actually invented security event management. And one of our clients was actually Houston ISD. So they back in 2000 were actually using security event management to try to deal with cybersecurity events. The reality is cybersecurity is expensive. Personnel is expensive. This is part of where we're going. I mean, I saw this the other day, and that is a chief information security officer these days. The average pay is between 550 and $800,000.
A
There's no
year.
way a
Yeah.
district's going to afford that.
Well, and it is said there's a huge talent shortage in this cybersecurity field.
Massive.
Certainly true in schools, which can't pay for those high salaries for high level expertise. Do you see any solution to this very real problem?
It has been a problem. It's a massive problem within the community college districts as well. My advice, two pieces of advice here. One, I would find a staff member, maybe on your IT team, maybe somebody that's got some distance and some experience with regulatory or those kinds of skill sets. If they have those kinds of skill sets and they might have the aptitude for it, I would send them to every cybersecurity training that I possibly could and every cybersecurity conference, because if you train them up and they already know your environment and then make that position something that they can grow into, that's one thing I would do. I would also couple that, and this is the only way that I see given budget impacts, right? The only way that I see that you do this is by utilizing a firm like NCX Group, and there's others, not only to provide the expertise and how you develop the plans and how you launch it within the organization, but also how you bring in managed security services and those expertise. In a lot of cases, we can provide managed security services that covers the entire organization. I mean, everything from cybersecurity awareness to um, uh, cybersecurity awareness training to monitoring, managing your cloud environment, your what's called managed detection and response, which is your endpoint and all the activity that goes on in the network, and utilize AI along the way to determine what's a
Mhm.
real threat and what's not a real threat. And it expands your capabilities, but we're able to do it at a price point that is probably, under $10,000 a month.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
but it
Well,
expands your
okay.
capabilities, it lessens the impact on your budget, and it gives you the needed experience that you don't have.
Right. I think many schools across the country and internationally, aging technology is a problem, right? To just keep
Correct.
up with that constant replacement cycle. How does that put schools at additional risk for cyber problems? That, keeping up with the technology.
It's funny you mention that. Recently, we were working on a project with um, someone in education, and we found Windows XP servers in the environment. Now, those have been sunsetted by Microsoft on any kind of support for the better part of 15 years. The fact that they were still there and still chugging along in the environment was astounding to us.
Wow.
But I mean, that operating system has vulnerabilities so big you can drive a truck through any. So, I mean, it's those kinds of things. It's looking at your technology plan, looking at your district technology plans. What is the refresh rate? A lot of these community college districts, they actually go out for bond measures just to deal with the technology elements of it.
Wow.
And they're highly effective with them.
Right.
And it gets them the money that they need to do those upgrades uh,
Right.
for the districts.
Right. That actually makes a lot of sense. Here's a question for you. Are federal and state regulations keeping up with the pace of risk?
Sadly, no. Um, the one thing about the adversary out there is they are incredibly creative. Is the best way to put it. They will go through and try everything in the world to find the thing that gives them access, and they got nothing but time.
Right.
And so they've got teams working on it. They understand. I mean, you're not dealing with people that are um, lack intelligence. You're talking about people that have masters that have been to MIT equivalents. They know their stuff, and the reality is there's a light and dark side to the Star Wars reference here. There's a
Right.
light and dark side to this whole thing. There's a lot more money on the dark side of this than there is on the good guy side of it.
Oh, wow. And I think what creeps me out a lot is, and I'm about to reveal my naivete about all this, but I assume it's a guy in a basement somewhere trolling on Reddit and then jumping over and trying to hack and then jumping back over onto something else, whatever. But you're telling me it's international. It is, various countries that we may never
Organized
even, right, and
states, and
organized.
it's state sponsored in a lot of cases.
Oh, that is, yeah. So I want to talk again. This is going to reveal my naivete. I've heard and seen schools being attacked for ransom. And how does that work? If a district has to pay out to get their own data back, there's probably no criminal path to ever catch these hazy people or organizations out there, right? There's no stopping it.
It's really hard. And I'll say this from the standpoint of the law enforcement agencies that we've worked with through the years. A lot of times, again, if you're not running security event management, actually digesting the logs, and the way to think about this is the logs that we're talking about from your IT environment are a lot like You know, when you go to the ATM and you do an ATM transaction and there's a camera there, right? That
Mhm.
records that transaction. The
Right.
network and security event management records the millions of transactions that happen every day on that network as something is sent and received.
Uh,
So we have the detail. Sadly, most organizations don't have that technology in their environments, or if they have it, they're not running it effectively. Or the number three option is they had it, couldn't run it, and pulled it out. That's the other thing that happens too.
right.
So without that, there is no place for law enforcement to go. The
Right.
other side of it is there's so many attacks, law enforcement has no way. There's not enough staff, even at
Mhm.
the FBI, even at your larger cities. There's no staff for them to come in and be your heroes. So you're going to have to be your own hero
Yeah.
in this, and that means building a program. I mean, my grandmother used to say this all the time: Mike, a pound of preventions, worth, whatever, a
Right.
peak's worth of
An
preventions
ounce,
worth
what
a
is it? An ounce of prevention
prevention, a
is worth a
pound of cure.
right. There you go. There you go.
That's it. So, and it's absolutely true. The fact that through the years we have every organization that we've worked with through the years, we haven't had anybody actually experience a loss of data. Now, have there been issues and small incidences? Yeah, but they're not catastrophic.
Right.
And it comes down to doing the right things, the smart things, and being diligent in building your program. It's a lot like, everybody wants to be fit and thin and healthy, right? Well, that doesn't happen without going to the gym, exercising, and eating the right foods and taking your vitamins, according to Hulk Hogan. So,
Right.
so you have to put in the work. If you don't put in the work and you don't put in the effort, I don't care what you do, you're not going to be effective with this.
Right. Well, and I think, when I think about it that way, it actually motivates me because I think I'm just normal Joe Schmo, principal, teacher, educator, and I think, it'll be okay. It won't happen to me. But what I hear you saying is, no, there are specific things I can do. I can take my vitamins. I can go to the gym. And in terms of cybersecurity, I can have a password manager. I can do this. And I love this tip, kind of grow your own cybersecurity experts, consult with companies like yours, get to know it better. And then I assume too that we all just need to be talking about this more, right? We need
Well,
to make it a
yeah, I mean
thing.
it's a community issue. As I said, it's a business process. So it cuts across every aspect of the organization. Your IT teams by themselves on this, th- they're outgunned. Pardon.
Right.
I mean, it's a bad word with education, but 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 they're out, they don't have the tools and they don't have the resources, and there's no investment in it. What I love here is every district that I know, and the one comes to mind at top of the list is LA Unified.
Mhm.
A little over a year ago, got hit with ransomware. Well, no budget, no budget, no budget to prevent anything. But oh my God, the amount of money that came out to go deal with that was astounding. The other
Right.
important part here is when there's a ransomware event, there's only about a 40% chance that you're actually going to get your data back.
Interesting.
You're dealing with criminals. Do you think they're going to
Right.
play? They're not going to play straight.
Right. Right. That's interesting. Like you said, we all do that. We have no money, we have no money, we have no money. And then when we're working retroactively, then all of a sudden we find the money because we see how bad the damage is.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying very clearly and very eloquently is proactive is the answer here. You got to get ahead of it and invest the time and money ahead of time.
You have to make, and this is an analogy that I use all the time. Cybersecurity is a lot like two different candies. And I like to use analogies that people understand.
Right.
So what most businesses and organizations have done is they have built a hard outer shell, they've built the right firewalls, they've put up the right external defenses. But what it is inside is a soft, chewy middle. It's a skittle.
Right.
right? It's a Skittle. If everybody thinks about a Skittle, that's what it is. It's a crunchy outer shell and a chewy middle. What we want to build is a jawbreaker. You want to make this a challenge for them to make money. The longer it takes for them to make money, the more they will walk away.
Got it. You are very good at analogies, by the way. I do want to say that. And that was why I was so drawn to talk to you, because I think you've got quite a bit of teacher in you, you've got leader in you, and you've got this tech person in you. I love the jawbreaker analogy because I know I've given up on many a jawbreaker before, but I've never given up on a Twizzler ever.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, everybody can relate to that. I mean, and that's the thing. Cybersecurity in with cybersecurity awareness, one of the things I love to talk about is the benefit to the employee and the staff member in their own personal lives. They may think of it as a royal pain at work, but they're more aware at home. And so their own data is more secure. Their own lives are more secure. And, and you're right. One of the things we love about what we do is the teacher aspect of this. It is literally taking an organization from ground zero to maturity, to
Right.
where they're able to fully defend themselves. The other side of it, on the business side of it, just the in the real business world, what it helps with is actually growing revenues,
Mhm.
because contracts are awarded based upon your security. The other thing it's tied to now is insurance.
Oh, sure.
So what
Yeah.
we're seeing now, cybersecurity is in every insurance policy known to man right now. And
Yeah.
if you're doing it right, it will reduce your insurance cost by 20 to 25%.
I hadn't even thought of that. Insurance companies are probably needing to audit districts to know what the insurance rate's going to be. And if a district is a Skittle, it's going to be a different insurance rate than if it's a jawbreaker.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
that makes
so
sense.
there's 11 things really that we look for with that. Do you have modern firewalls? Are you using a password manager? Are you using multi-factor authentication? Do you use encryption on the identity information? Simple things like that. Do you have incident response plan? Do you have is there a policy for out of cycle wire transfers, as an
Yeah,
example?
right,
So these things, if you're doing these simple things, and they're really simple, if
right.
you're doing these things, you're now making yourself a jawbreaker. The
Sure.
likelihood of getting through security awareness training is foundational.
Yeah.
Policies, procedures on cybersecurity, foundational. If you're doing these things, you're going to make yourself a harder target.
So I'm a principal. I am driving to work somewhere in the world and I'm listening to this podcast and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I need more Mike." How do our listeners find you? How I know, your organization, you have a certain reach and you're doing a lot of speaking, I know, to educators. How do our listeners find you? If I'm a principal and I need my superintendent to hear this podcast and we want to reach out to Mike Fitzpatrick, how do we find you?
The easiest place, one is obviously the website, ncxgroup.com, and that's ncxgroup.com. And there's more information there. There's a contact form there.
Okay.
The other is, through LinkedIn is a really great way to connect with me and have a conversation. And I think the well, just search for Mike Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
You'll
Perfect.
find me, Mike Fitzpatrick, NCX Group. You'll find me.
Perfect. And listeners, we're going to put those links on the website as well with the show notes. So they will all be there for you. Mike, I cannot thank you enough. You were so gracious and kind when some crazy lady from Ohio reaches out and wants you on her podcast. So thank you for all the time you've given. And I look forward to watching you work and following you on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your time today.
Jen, it is my absolute pleasure. Anytime you want to do this, I'm here for it, because at the end of the day, I've seen the other side of these results, and it's so much easier if we just stop them ahead of time.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.